Hello, and welcome to Danswers Live, the only podcast with even worse video quality than regular Danswers. I'm going to try to do this live and see how it goes. I think it'd be fun. Someone suggested it. We're going to have a little bit more of a fun conversation. I'm not able to edit out the moments where I go on long rants about how General Mills is an affiliate of satanic organizations. I'm not going to get to go on long rants about how the bunny rabbit has caused untold damage to the ecosystem of Australia. These things are going to have to stay in this episode, and I have to say, I'm a little scared, but we'll see what the blowback is from that. I got a few questions for this podcast, but let me start by saying, if you have an anonymous question, you can send it to the email below. It's Danswerspodcast@gmail.com. I want to start getting some of these questions that other people get, okay? Everybody's asking me questions about myself, which is fine, but I don't really like talking about, I don't care, right? Not that I don't care about your questions, I just don't care to talk about myself. I want to hear more about you guys. I don't get questions like, I cheated on my husband with his two brothers. Which one should I end up with? Those are good. I want those kinds of questions. Don't make it up. Maybe just make it up. You know what? I completely retract that. Make your life more interesting for me, so I can answer a more direct and intriguing question. Tell me about a series of armed robberies you committed up and down the Western Coast. I want to hear about those sorts of things, right? Because I got a lot of good questions, but they're about, like, why do you have so many dishes? And the answer to that is that I eat a lot of food. And then we come to the end, right? So let's throw that in the Gmail and let's get cooking on something, okay? So I was walking down the store, or down the aisles of the store today, and I buy protein because I don't eat a lot of meat, right? And you need animal protein. I'm a believer in that you should have like a little bit of like whey protein or whatever. You can obviously supplement it and stuff. I'm just not smart enough to do that with my body. So I'm walking down, and every single protein in the grocery store I went to when I was a kid would have like huge, like, dudes with like tits, you know what I mean? And like 17 their abs looked like tits, do you know what I mean? Like their abs were the size of my chest. So it's like they have 6 chests down their abs. And I do wonder if there's something maternal about that. I do wonder if, you know, their mom had given them a little bit more love, if they wouldn't need like udders, like dog nipples down their chest. But that's how, like, my dad would have protein with a dude like that, and I was like, oh, so if I drink this protein, surely I won't continue to be a fat child through 7th grade. Surely this will make me into a behemoth. And as a kid, you don't really think about that sort of stuff, but I really did have this direct idea in my mind that if I took the whey protein, I would just be this jacked 4'5", like, you know, child just walking around. And I was like, that would be cool because I would look different than my classmates. And that's all I cared about. That's all a lot of kids care about when they're younger. It's either fitting in or being completely different. And I was more of a completely different kind of guy. I would fantasize about stuff like, if I had horns, that would be awesome. Because my classmates would have to look at me and go, oh, the horn kid. Let's hang out with the horn kid. As though that's where kids' minds go. They're like, oh, we want to hang out with the kid whose skin is blue. And they wouldn't just mercilessly bully you for that. But now, protein has kind of chilled out a little bit, at least in grocery stores. Like, you don't see the pictures of, like, huge jacked dudes. But I found one. I found a protein with, like, that's marketed towards people who want to be absolutely, like, jacked as hell. And I was like, it's so funny how susceptible my brain is to images or suggestions of what body type do you want. Because honestly, when I am posed with the question, don't you want to be 300 pounds of muscle? I immediately just go, yes, of course. Of course I would want to be 300 pounds of muscle. Not considering how difficult that would be walking around during the day, or how hard it would be to fit in cars, or how silly it would look for me to drive my Prius and to get up and to have the shocks relieve because my Prius is made to transport, maybe at most a mice circus or like a box full of frogs. But if I weighed 300 pounds, my Prius would be like it had hydraulics. So that, and then I look at a guy like Pete Davidson, and my brain will immediately switch to, wouldn't it be cool to be incredibly skinny? Wouldn't it be cool to, kind of have the body and fluid movements of Dracula? And I guess it's a sign either of unhappiness or just, I don't really consider, I don't think about the thoughts that I have a lot. So I just let my brain kind of jump from one thing to another until I catch it, and I'm like, no, you don't want to be skinny. No, you don't want to be skinny. You want to be just a regular sized guy. But I look at Pete Davidson and I go, you know what I think will happen? I think eventually there will be workout programs, because the skinny body is kind of making its way back into, popularity for men. I think there's going to be workout programs for guys now that make them skinny. I think we're going to switch I think women are going to get incredibly strong. Wouldn't this be cool? Just obviously trying to strive for any sort of specific body type that's not true to yourself is very bad and unhealthy. But just as a thought experiment, wouldn't it at least be a little bit funny if in a few years men were striving to be 110 pounds because of the images that we're getting of Timothy Chalamet or Pete Davidson, and then women just became absolutely jacked, they're the ones who are in the NFL now? It would be maybe that's what we need to kind of balance things out. Just as a suggestion, okay? It'd be a little bit funny. Every man is on the Christian Bale diet for The Machinist, where he eats an apple and smokes 4,000 cigarettes a day. And we all look at that and we go, good for Christian Bale. I've never seen The Machinist before. I don't think any of my friends ever have, but we're still Christian Bale's awesome for that. But I feel like men are going to be marketed with specific diets and workout programs to become incredibly skinny. And that's a scary prospect, because I think a lot of guys already have they called it bigorexia, which don't make up a silly name for a problem. That's what it's called when men have body dysmorphia where they need to be incredibly jacked. They call it bigorexia. And whenever I hear that, I go, don't give it a funny name. If you want this to be taken seriously, which I don't think anyone really does, no one really gives a shit about that one, which I think they should, but they don't. But they're let's call it Dumbo disease. It's that's not going to get anyone to, treat this like a problem. And it is a real problem, because it's the only form of eating disorder that results in a mentally unstable person becoming jacked. And isn't that a dangerous potentially a dangerous situation? Because what you have with bigorexia is you have guys who have body dysmorphia, so they get incredibly jacked. So you have an insecure person who has turned their body into an absolute tank. We don't need that roaming the street. Let's deal with that. Let's tell these guys, hey, it's okay. Get a little bit Chalamet, become a little bit Machinist-y. Not that far, but it's so hard to be right. Do you know what I mean? It's so hard to just be normal now. Just have a normal body and just be happy with it. It's for everybody, women more than men, because women have been getting these messages for so much longer. But maybe because they're so saturated with the messages, it might be a little bit easier for them to at least have some of the tools to break out. Or at least I've heard that conversation more for women, where it's know your body's good and I think guys are a little slow on the uptake for that, which I think we should be more on the uptake, where it's hey buddy, just healthy is fine, just be wherever you think that is. But to take a slight reprieve, I was going on my morning walk, and the streets of my neighborhood are lined with dog shit, right? It's completely, everybody lets their dog just go to the bathroom wherever they want in my neighborhood. And here's where I'm at with that. It's, if you're gonna let your dog do that, people will be like, they should take your dog away from you. I think that's a little harsh. I think they should take your home and car away from you. Okay? And that's not being rude. I think you should be forced to live where your dog went to the bathroom. And I don't think that's because what you're doing is you're taking a piece of public grass and you're rendering it useless, which is fine, but then live there. Just live there. You and your dog, who's your best friend, I'm sure, even though you let him, shit on the street. That's exactly what you would let your best friend do. If you let well, it is kind of, actually. Now that I think about it, maybe you're taking it too literally to allow your dog to be your best friend. Because if my best friend took a shit on the street, I would look at him and go, we need to get out of here. So maybe you are taking it literally. But here's the thing, in LA, you need that piece, because there's people who need to do grounding exercises. They need to do yogic grounding exercises on that piece of grass, and you're taking that away from them, okay? And they're going to go crazy because they already are, but even more so because they're not allowed to put their bare feet on grass, which is something I also do. I am one of the crazy people of which I speak. You're not letting these people do competitive hula hooping on that patch of grass. You have to let these people live. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, so we have a couple of questions. This question is actually really interesting. Who taught you how to play poker? On the live I was doing on Facebook, I was talking about playing poker. My uncle taught me how to play poker, and the way I learned is at family gatherings, our whole family would get together and we would play one big game of poker. And it's because Thanksgiving isn't a time enough for people to argue and disagree and hate each other. So we decided, why don't we amp that up? Like, what if Thanksgiving was uncomfortable? Could you picture such a thing? I certainly can't. So we would make these games. I would immediately bust out and do poorly. But my uncle's a very good poker player. I took it back up recently in the pandemic to play poker because obviously you can do it in a small group. You can do it in your pod or whatever. And it was fun. But I always say this. I say, don't have a poker night if you're trying to have a fun night. Have a poker night if you're trying to learn about yourself and your friends and you're really close. But poker with strangers is a little bit difficult because poker is a game of mental warfare. And the fact that we've made it this party game is a little bit insane to me because you're just going, hey, let's lie and deceive each other for 5 hours. It's also a very long game. So it's insane to me that poker has this like level of popularity as like a fun party game. And sometimes people will come by our games and be like, oh, it would be fun. Let me play some poker. And they just lose everything. Or they become a monster because they win a few hands and they just go like complete megalomaniac. And there's money at stake, never a big amount with me and my friends because we're all comedians and degenerates, but enough to affect our day. Listen, $20 ain't nothing to me, okay? $20 is the difference between, cereal or worse cereal. So that's where my life is right now. So that's who taught me to play poker. And I have another question of how I landed on the watching the spoon thing. I do jokes at the sink where I watch the spoon. Someone asked me how I came to that. I just did. I've always told jokes. I'm a comedian, and I was like, wouldn't it be fun if I did this? And I think what it did, unintentionally, I didn't mean for this to be the thing, but it allows people to hear a joke and hear you tell it without it being right in your face. And I always think of jokes when I'm doing something casual. So I was like, I should tell them while I'm doing something casual, too. So that answers that question. We're going to come back with more questions for next episode. Please throw them in the Gmail. And please subscribe so you can see the next episodes. And also it helps me out tremendously. I will explain to you why I want you to subscribe. When I get to 1,000 subscribers in a few minutes, I can start making money off of this, which would be great because, like I said, $20 means a lot to me. A lot of people will just vaguely be like, please subscribe. And you're like, why would I subscribe to this? That's why. And if that turns you off of the idea of subscribing, totally fine. But if you want me to make even a little bit of headway in this dirty, dirty world, give me a hand with that. Thank you. Now I have to turn the live off. And look, you get to see my bad handwriting.